Hello there, friends. Sam here. Just over the past year or so, I've gotten interested in exploring mythology and magical systems outside of the usual suspects, outside of Greco-Roman, Celtic, and Victorian occultism. And particularly, I started reading on Eastern European mythology and folklore. Just in the last year or two, there's been a couple of really excellent popular books intended for a popular audience, not an academic audience, published that I am lucky enough to have here in a little pile beside me. So I'm going to do a quick book review video now, dealing with these books, and encourage you to get them. They're all quite solid, quite well written, interesting pieces of work, and I'm really pleased that interest in Eastern and Northern European folklore and magic is starting to be around. It's a little explored and often quite different approach, and it's really quite interesting to see what they come up with. So I'll start with this one. This one's by Margit, Toth. It's called Magia: Hungarian Myth, Magic, and Folklore. Published by Llewellyn. It just coming out this month in October. I got a review copy pre-publication. Hungary is a little bit of an outlier in Europe. The language spoken there, Magyar, is related to only one other language in Europe, Finnish, because the Hungarians are recent migrants into Europe about 1,000 years ago. Well, I guess that's recent. And so they draw from a different set of foundation folklore and mythology, which does have some parallels and similarities to the other folk in their area in Central Europe and also further east in the Russian areas. But it's sufficiently different that it's quite interesting. And so here's a book on their folklore. It's 400 pages long, so it's a pretty substantial work. It's impossible to, of course, capture the folklore or traditions of a group of people in a single book, but this gives an excellent introduction to a wide range and different facets of Hungarian folklore. The folklore has been damaged quite a bit by urbanization, modernization, and the after effects of the lengthy Soviet occupation of Hungary, but fragments exist, and substantial folklore research was done and is being used to revitalize many of these traditions. Unfortunately, some of the people revitalizing these traditions are racist nationalists, which Toth points out and carefully and well differentiates herself from them. So, I'll give you a quick run through of the contents. She deals with mythology, the world of the spirits, religious practices, spirits of the sky, fairies and nature spirits, and an interesting group called the Rozak. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. A group of spirits that are ambivalent. Sometimes they act for the good, sometimes they act for the evil. Sort of like traditional fairies in many ways, right? You know, be cautious and careful in dealing with them, and sacred animals. Then she talks about daily life, particularly in rural areas, in village life, but also family customs, homestead and family customs, sacred food and drink. Then deals with magic users, various types of magic users, witches, not the neo-pagan witches, but the folklore witches who are malevolent evildoers, defense against witchcraft, and so on. Also, there's a substantial werewolf tradition in Hungary, and she deals a little bit with that. Magical techniques, talismans, and various other sacred objects, divination, healing magic. Then she goes into the yearly celebrations, the liturgical year, sacred time, winter, special things that have to do with the different seasons, many of which have been syncretized with Christianity. So they'll have Easter celebrations that include a substantial chunk of folklore materials, as well as the standard Christian stuff, and so on. Rites of passage are another area. It's a really good place to start. What's particularly notable is that Toth relies on principally Magyar language sources, and quite a lot of them, both scholarly work and also folklore collections in the Magyar language, which she translates, of course, for us. The bibliography, the few English language sources that I can identify in here are all substantial, good pieces of work. Yeah, she writes well. It's entertaining. There's a lot of personal kinds of anecdotes and a few personal stories from her own life, and it's very grounded. I like this book quite a lot. I encourage you, if you're interested in this area, or if you have family connections, please get a copy for yourself. The next book, this one is from the northern traditions. Eye of Odin, Nordic Mythology and the Wisdom of the Vikings by Per Henrik Gullfoss, published by Crossed Crow Books, and I believe this was this year. Let me just see. Yeah, it was from this year. Crossed Crow Books is a good new pagan publishing house. I've seen several works from them, and on the whole, I've been quite impressed. They're definitely worth looking for. This fellow, Gullfoss, uses astrology and psychology to look at Norse mythology. Couple of things that I didn't think would fit together very well, but in fact, he tells the stories very, very well. He syncretizes different Norse deities with planetary aspects, Loki and Mercury, Odin and Uranus, Thor and Jupiter. Talks about the types of wisdom, the way that the sacrifice of Odin works, stories like the creation of humankind, and it and talks about these things as psychological processes as well. How the gods correspond with, say, love, with gender identity, with bravery, personal qualities. It's very, very good. I was a little surprised, actually, because I wasn't sure if he'd be able to syncretize these things without just wandering off into perennial philosophy foolishness or something. But yes, this is another book. If you are drawn to excuse me, drawn to the northern path, or if you are interested in astrology, I would definitely recommend picking up a copy of this. It's a very fine piece of work. Okay, wandering back to the east now. This one, Ancestral Slavic Magic, Transcend Family Patterns and Empower Ancestral Connections by Natasha Helvin. Published by Destiny Books, and let me just take a look here. 2024. What a good book. She comes from a Russian family tradition, Russian village and family folk tradition. She's also an initiate into Haitian voodoo. Although she does not blend the two, she draws from both of them in this book, principally focused on ancestor worship, ancestors in both of these traditions, which deal with them somewhat differently. In Slavic tradition, it's definitely your blood ancestry, and your blood ancestry going back 7 generations, with each generation having, I guess, an influence over different aspects of your life. She elucidates these things quite clearly and effectively. She also talks about ancestors in Haitian voodoo, which are not necessarily blood ancestors, but can be people who inspired you in your life. Then talks about various rites of passage, initiation, weddings, and the magic and funerals, the magical properties of things like bridges, water. Very, very interesting. Well supported. She relies on scholarship, but also her own personal experiences and personal tradition, and makes it clear that although she is adapting stuff, she's not pulling it out of nowhere. She's adapting, in some cases, adapting things that she was taught in her family. In some cases, adapting things from print. She writes like a Russian. That's one thing that I definitely want to say. She writes like a Russian. She's direct, blunt, and occasionally abrasive. But the quality of the writing in here is, it's very good. The quality of the scholarship is excellent. If you are interested in Eastern European tradition, you definitely should read this. Okay, another one from the north. This one, Icelandic Plant Magic, Folk Herbalism of the North by Albert Bjorn. 2023 by Cross Crow Books. This is just an excellent reference book. He lists about 100 different species of plants that are used in magical ways in Northern Europe, in Iceland specifically, many of which are commonly found around where I live as well, in Centre and North Canada. He talks about the magical associations of them, the association with different deities. Some of these plants have many magical associations and uses, some have less, but he's quite detailed, provides examples of how they are used and how they can be used in specifically magical plant magic. He also talks about how you can use plant magic in association with other forms of magic, other things such as blessings, blessing your tools and charging them, curses and gambling, various other things. A very, very good reference book. Again, it's well written, clear, and effective. And he has a number of little anecdotes and stories to make it flow along. It's well illustrated as well, with illustrations of things like sigils and staves, as well as some plant illustrations. Good book. Good book. For reference, yeah, he doesn't give an awful lot of ritual details. A lot of that is stuff that you have to work out for yourself anyhow. And finally, this is one on, again, Slavic, Eastern European in general. Let me just, there you go. 2023 Mooned Books. It's called Bogowie, A Study of Eastern Europe's Ancient Gods. It's by T.D. Kokoszka, and I probably mispronounced that. Yes, a very good general outline of deities and ideas, a wide range of goddesses and gods that I have heard very little about, based in scholarship. He's careful to talk about the limits of the scholarship. For example, there was a tendency during the Soviet period when they did folklore scholarship to downplay the importance of the various subject countries, like Ukraine at that point, in the development of Slavic culture, and to center everything in Rusland, and to also downplay Lithuania's independent religious and folklore traditions, and so on. So he notes the limits of his scholarship. He draws fairly large patterns. He makes the point that it appears that a lot of this stuff comes from the ancient Indo-European sources. That it's modified by different cultures, of course, as they grow. But he does tend towards that larger picture, while giving us quite a bit of interesting detail for various of these goddesses and gods. Sort of a general Slavic folklore, talking also about the way that Ossetian culture and other ancient cultures worked together to make the folklore. He relies a lot on folk tales, and he gives a number of examples of these folk tales in translation as he's making his points. So it's an interesting read. Good book, very good book. So that's my little pile for now. I've got another couple sitting over here that I'll eventually get to in Eastern Europe. What strikes me, first of all, is that they're substantially more village oriented. The mythology of the Greco-Roman goddesses and gods, they were urban cultures, so their mythology is much more organized around hierarchies. The king god, his various consorts, the subsidiary goddesses and gods who have areas of influence but are not. The way that the mythology deals with hierarchy and power is quite a bit different in these village and folk traditions, and the role of magic is different. The Greco-Roman cultures, there was, of course, folk magic. but it wasn't as important as it is on the village and the smaller scale level. As well, the Greco-Roman, particularly the Romans, were very cosmopolitan. There was less emphasis on the ancestors, certainly in the later period, and more on citizenship and everyone being subsumed under the empire. So yes, interesting stuff. Worth a read. I recommend that everybody take, I don't know, what, $150 out of your bank account and buy all these books, or at least one or two of them. Anyhow, that's it for me. I'll come back and do probably another book review video sometime soon. Take care now.